The 1980s, a decade of excess, of big hair, big shoulders, and even bigger ambitions. It was the era of greed is good. But this cultural explosion of avarice wasn't a random event. It was engineered. It was fueled by a new, powerful, and incredibly dangerous financial weapon. It was called the junk bond. High-yield, high-risk corporate debt. For decades, Wall Street treated it like financial garbage. It was the uninvestable, the untouchable. Until one man saw something no one else did. He didn't see risk. He saw power. He saw a key that could unlock the entire American economy. His name was Michael Milken, and by the time he was done, he wouldn't just be the most powerful financier in the world, earning over $500 million in a single year. He would be a convicted felon, facing 98 counts of racketeering and fraud, and his invention would be blamed for a decade of corporate destruction. The question is not simply, was he a criminal? The question is systemic. How did one man, operating from a single X-shaped desk in Beverly Hills, become so powerful that he could dictate the fate of America's largest corporations? This is not just the story of the junk bond king. This is the story of how a single, flawed idea can break the entire system.
Deception on this scale requires an unimpeachable foundation of intellectual authority. Michael Milken's power didn't come from family money or connections. It came from an idea born in the halls of academia. While at Wharton, he studied a niche, overlooked corner of the financial world. High-yield bonds issued by fallen angels, once great companies that had fallen on hard times. The prevailing wisdom was that these bonds were too risky. But Milken's research showed something revolutionary. A diversified portfolio of these junk bonds consistently outperformed safer investment-grade bonds, even after accounting for the occasional bankruptcy. The higher yield more than compensated for the higher risk. This was not a sales pitch. It was a data-driven academic thesis. This intellectual legitimacy was his first shield. He wasn't a gambler. He was a scholar who had found a flaw in the market's logic. He took his radical idea to Drexel Burnham Lambert, a respectable but second-tier investment bank. They were hungry and willing to take a risk. They allowed Milken to build his high-yield bond department not in New York, but far away in Beverly Hills. This physical separation was crucial. It created an isolated, cult-like environment where Milken's word was law. This was his institutional legitimacy. He wasn't just a trader. He was the head of his own financial fiefdom. And finally, he built market legitimacy. In the beginning, no one wanted to buy his junk bonds. So Milken created his own network. He built personal relationships with hundreds of buyers at savings and loans, insurance companies, and mutual funds. He created a market where he was the central node. He controlled both the supply and the demand. If you wanted to play in the high-yield game, you had to go through Milken. He became the market. This absolute control gave him an aura of invincibility. With his legitimacy established, Milken unleashed the mechanism that would change corporate America forever. Before Milken, only the largest, safest, investment-grade companies could raise large amounts of money by issuing bonds. This created a rigid corporate hierarchy. The big got bigger, and the small struggled. Milken shattered this hierarchy. He used his network to raise billions for companies that Wall Street had ignored. Cable television pioneers like Ted Turner's CNN, casino builders like Steve Wynn, telecom upstarts like MCI. He was a hero to a new generation of entrepreneurs. He was democratizing capital. This part of the story was true. Junk bonds did fuel innovation, but this powerful tool soon found a much darker purpose: the hostile takeover, financed by the leveraged buyout, LBO. Milken realized he could use his junk bond machine to give corporate raiders the financial firepower to take over even the largest, most established companies in America. The mechanism was brutally simple. A raider like Carl Icahn or T. Boone Pickens would target a large, undervalued company. They didn't need to have the money to buy it. They just needed a letter from Milken and Drexel, a highly confident letter, promising they could raise the necessary billions by selling junk bonds. This letter was like a financial nuclear weapon. Armed with it, the raiders would launch their attack. If the takeover was successful, the target company itself would be saddled with the massive debt from the junk bonds used to acquire it. The raiders would then break up the company and sell off its assets to pay back the debt, often destroying jobs and communities in the process, while walking away with hundreds of millions in profit. The epicenter of this new universe was Drexel's annual high-yield bond conference, which became known as the Predator's Ball. It was the most exclusive event in the financial world. It was a gathering of the tribe, where corporate raiders, junk bond investors, and CEOs all came to pay homage to one man, King Mike. The event itself was a psychological tool, cementing Milken's status as the undisputed master of this new financial order. The system escalated at a breathtaking pace. By the mid-'80s, the junk bond market was a multi-hundred-billion-dollar behemoth. Milken himself was personally earning over $550 million in a single year. His power was absolute. He could create industries and destroy them. He was more powerful than the CEOs of the companies he financed. But this ecosystem was built on more than just high-yield debt. It was riddled with illegal activity. The first major crack appeared with Ivan Boesky, a prominent arbitrageur and a key player in Milken's network. In 1986, Boesky was arrested for insider trading. He was the biggest fish the government had ever caught, and to save himself, he agreed to cooperate. He wore a wire, and his testimony pointed directly back to the king, Michael Milken. The investigation was led by a relentlessly ambitious U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, Rudy Giuliani. Giuliani saw Milken not as a financial innovator, but as the head of a criminal enterprise. He used the powerful RICO Act, a law designed to fight the mafia, to build his case against Milken and Drexel. Why was the system blind for so long? Because everyone was getting rich. The insurance companies and savings and loans buying the bonds were getting huge returns. The raiders were making fortunes. Drexel was the most profitable firm on Wall Street. To question the legality of the system was to threaten the money machine. Furthermore, Milken's lawyers argued that his actions weren't criminal. They were just aggressive, innovative capitalism. The line between innovation and manipulation had become dangerously blurred. Faced with the terrifying threat of a RICO indictment, which would have allowed the government to freeze all its assets before a trial even began, Drexel Burnham Lambert crumbled. In February 1990, the firm filed for bankruptcy. 6,000 employees lost their jobs. The house that junk built had collapsed. A few months later, Michael Milken pleaded guilty to 6 counts of securities fraud and conspiracy.
He was sentenced to 10 years in prison, though he would serve less than 2. He was fined $600 million and banned from the securities industry for life. The predator's ball was over. The story of Michael Milken, like all great tales of deception, doesn't have a simple ending. After his release, he rebranded himself as a major philanthropist, funding billions in medical research. In 2020, he received a full presidential pardon. The Milken pattern is about the weaponization of a legitimate idea. First, intellectual justification. Find a genuine market inefficiency or a complex academic theory that can serve as a cover for aggressive, borderline illegal activity. Second, creation of a closed system. Build a network where you control both supply and demand, making you the indispensable center of the universe. Your power becomes the justification for your actions. And third, blurring the line. Push the boundaries of legality and ethics so far and so fast that the system cannot keep up, framing your actions as innovation rather than manipulation. Milken's tools, junk bonds and leveraged buyouts, are no longer considered scandalous. They are now standard, accepted instruments of modern capitalism, used every day by private equity firms. He didn't just break the rules, he permanently changed them. Milken taught Wall Street the most powerful lesson of all, that there is no debt too great, no company too large that cannot be bought if you can convince the world to finance your ambition. He revealed that capitalism's greatest weakness is capitalism itself. Next time, on Masters of Deception, we explore the story of a man who didn't just sell a stock, he sold an entire country.